Welcome to Scary Time by Indie Drop-In Network. Each week we feature an episode from the best independent creators. Subscribe for great scary content. If you would like to help support indie creators, check out our Patreon at the bottom of the show notes. Today's episode is from Believing the Bizarre. Don't forget to check out the show notes for links to subscribe and follow on social media. Enjoy the show.
Begin.
Welcome to Believing the Bizarre,
where we dive into the unknown and the unusual
and tell you whether or not we find it believable.
That is right. Guys, this is new here. This is new. We are diving into listener submission stories.
Thank you for all the follows and talking to us. I can't believe how well it's going so far.
Yeah, I just really want to say, you all are so incredibly kind. Like, we've been doing our best to try and reach out and communicate with the majority of people that start following, subscribing, and everything on social media. And the amount of support we're receiving, the amount of people that are sharing our stuff, it really means a lot to us, and we see it all, and we appreciate it. So follow us now as we begin our first personal story submission, The Great Dismal Swamp Mystery. Okay, so this story was submitted to us by William. This takes place in Suffolk, Virginia, at, as you could probably guess by the name, the Great Dismal Swamp Wildlife Refuge.
Yeah, okay, so you're taking me down on the hand here, because I have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, that's true. So the way, I guess we should say this. First of all, if you speak to us ever on social media, you are either talking to Charlie and I. There's
probably Tyler, honestly.
I do most of the reaching out, and Charlie does most of the production. But we do split up the work and the content load. So while I'm presenting this story, the next submission that we are going to embark on and make into a story, it's going to be presented by Charlie. So that way there's always a sense of, because you guys don't know the story, so the other one of us is kind of playing that role of not knowing what's coming up next to kind of spark genuine conversation.
Absolutely, because without conversation, what is this?
Nothing.
Exactly.
Right. So, Suffolk, Virginia, Dismal Swamp Wildlife Reserve.
It's called Dismal Swamp?
Yeah.
It sounds like an insult.
It was kind of.
Okay, good.
It's not looked upon fondly. It's a swamp, and it kind of has creepy auras to it. It's over 107,000 acres of forested wetlands with a 3,000 acre lake, Lake Drummond, like Andre Drummond, like on the Cavs.
I don't know. That's fine.
They don't know either. So there's three parts to this story that we're going to get into. There's the sounds, there's this first encounter, and there's a second encounter. Now, I want to shout William out. First of all, you're our very first submitted story, so thank you. And second, he had a lot of really good stories that he sent. I kind of took the ones that kind of made a succinct story, like one narrative. So that's what we're going to go with, the swamp. But I just want to thank you, William, for sending all these stories, because they were really entertaining. And you could probably start your own podcast and do well, because they were really good.
So you're saying, is William an untapped source? And are we going to come back to anything else? Or?
Very potentially.
All right.
But today, we are talking about the Dismal Swamp Wildlife Reserve. So let's start with the sounds, okay?
Okay.
Where William lives on the Dismal Swamp Wildlife Reserve is...
he lives there?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Shoot.
Very, not like inside. He has a house. His father actually built the house
really
with his own hands, because he told me a paranormal story, but he said that it wasn't like nobody died in the house because his father built that house. So they live in a house on a very secluded area, and when it comes to the sounds that he hears coming from the forest, it can't be, he doesn't hear the hustle and bustle of a suburb or a city. His nearest neighbor is half a mile away. So he's pretty alone out there. So being near the wildlife reserve and away from people, he gets used to hearing a lot of different noises. Like I said, instead of cars and sirens, he hears birds and barn owls and mountain lions and coyotes and frogs and such. However, he details that there are a few sounds that he hears, and even his father hears, that are very unusual.
Oh, okay. All right. So I'm hooked right now. Like, I am hooked in.
Good. when William was younger, he had a hot tub in his backyard that
Jealous.
I know, same, that he would like to lay in, and he'd like to just lay out there and listen. Because he made a point to reference that just the sounds are just crazy. Like, even outside the paranormal, I'm sure just the sounds that you would hear of the animals and the insects and everything probably kind of sounds amazing. Probably after living there for so long, it would drown out a little bit. But he also has a deck. He has a shooting stand, because there's like a gun range on his property, which we'll get back to the shooting stand, or the deer stand as he calls it. But he likes to listen to the surrounding forest. So some of the unusual things that he hears people screaming, he hears shouting, he hears voices, and he also hears babies crying.
In the forest?
In the forest. Now,
Not on TV.
Not on TV, no.
Oh my God.
While he's outside listening in the forest. And he says that out of all the noises he hears, the most frequent thing is the babies crying. And he said he brought it to his father's attention, and he got the same reaction as if you were to say, "Oh, did you see that owl?" His father's like, "Yeah, I hear it." It's just like, I mean, like...
Whoa,
like,
okay, pause. His dad's like, yeah, that's cool, yeah, next subject. Are you kidding me? That's crazy.
I think it's just kind of like when you hear something so much, it's when you become numb to it. Like, I imagine if you live in a haunted house, like if you have a guest over, they might see a cupboard open, and, you know, you living there for so many years, you might just be like, oh yeah, that's, you know, that's the ghost.
That's that old joke. You're like, oh, boo, boo, whatever.
Right. Now, he told the story very humbly, and he did say, you know, it could be his imagination, and he understands that coyotes and mountain lions do make weird noises. They do make shrieking noises. He understands that there are animals that make creepy noises, but he can't explain or shake the feeling of the crying baby sounds coming from the woods. Now, as if hearing voices and babies crying weren't creepy enough, this is absolutely crazy to me. He claims that he hears his name called out from the forest. And not only does he hear his name being called out to him, it takes on the voice of his sister and his father. But it's crazy because his sister doesn't even live there. And he said this is infrequent. Like, where the babies, he hears that a lot. It's not an every night or every day or probably every month thing where he hears his own voice. But he says, like, when either he's out on his deck or anywhere outside, sometimes he will occasionally hear what sounds like a family member call his name out.
Did he say it was like, is it always nighttime or is it during the day too?
He didn't specify. I imagine that it would be night, but maybe not. Forest is a forest. It can be creepy even during like kind of like a cloudy day.
Dude, I am getting full body chills right now. Like, ugh.
So that's the first part of the story.
Oh,
noises.
We're just dipping a toe in.
Yeah, so there's two encounters. You can kind of consider them a little bit separate from the noises, but at the same time, this is encapsulating his stories with this wildlife refuge. So encounter one. As I mentioned, William's family owns a gun club on their property.
That's very cool.
He said it's about a 200-meter shooting range.
That's very cool.
On their shooting range, they have a building which they call the shooting shack.
Sure.
And on top of the shooting shack is a 14-foot high deer stand. I don't hunt, but I imagine that's, you go up there to scout out.
I got a Shake Shack by me.
A Shake Shack?
Yeah, it's very delicious.
Okay, good. So one night, he was up on the deer stand when William saw a figure in the shadows about 50 feet away.
Did you shoot it?
It was an estimate. Not yet.
Okay.
And think context. Again, I'm always trying to bring context to the story. He's thinking deer, coyote. Mm-hmm. Like, you guys know you're listening to a paranormal podcast, so your mind's racing. Him. And although, creepy stuff obviously happens here, but imagine if you were out at night and you saw something walking off for you. Ah, man, that looks like a deer. There's a lot of deer by me. That's what I would assume it was. So, he's going, oh, whatever. There's something out there. I wonder what it is. But then one of his dogs start barking. He's got two dogs. They're both English Mastiff Rottweilers. One of them's named Apollo.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Samesies.
I know, that's Charles. So it starts growling at what he assumes is the deer. And he's like, oh, that's weird. So he's looking at the animal in the distance. And then his second dog starts barking. So there's like a growling that's just kind of growing louder and louder with his dogs. And then, inexplicably, the shadow animal notices William, his 2 dogs, and the growling, and the animal gets up on its hind legs, and it starts running. It runs into a dense group of bushes, and it climbs to the top of this tree. In this thicket of bushes, there is one lone tree with this thing at the top of it. So William and his 2 dogs are by the 14-foot high deer stand, looking at this thing at the top of a tree, looking back at them. Now you can't identify it. It's night. There's a shadow up in a tree, so it's kind of like this staring duel. And William, I mean, he what do you do? So he does what I think most people would do. You call your father.
Yeah, for sure.
So William calls for his father to come out, and so now he sees it too.
Oh my god!
So he sees something is in this tree, and it's too dark to identify, but they know something is up there. So they go in and they grab a handgun. Well, his dad runs into the house and grabs a handgun and brings it back.
Do you know what kind?
I don't. He might have said it, and I might have skimmed over that.
It's like you would.
Yeah, I'm almost positive he probably said it. Okay. So just picture a handgun. Yep, that's it. Yep, good job.
Okay.
So he gives his dad gives him a handgun, and he says, "Take a shot at it." I feel like his dad is a character, and I mean that in the coolest way possible. Because somebody who's like, "Yeah, they're just babies crying in the forest," and then is like, "Here, take a shot at it."
Yeah.
I feel like I'd like to meet his dad.
I feel like I do too.
So William was a little surprised at first that, his father was just like, "Yeah, shoot it." But then he's kind of like, okay. So he takes a shot. He takes one shot at the creature in the tree. And he doesn't know if he hits it. He doesn't know if he hits the tree. But whatever happens, after he squeezed off that shot, whether it be the noise or it actually hitting it or the tree, the creature fell out of the tree and then it scampered off into the forest.
Oh man!
Bipedally.
Man, I hope that was a silver bullet.
Probably not.
No, I don't think so. But Jesus Christ!
So the second encounter takes place about a year after the shoot shack incident that we just covered.
Okay, so a year later.
So William's inside his house when again he hears his dogs barking and growling at something in his backyard.
Have we thought maybe the dogs are defective? Or?
Well, clearly not. They alerted him correctly to whatever it was last time.
You're right.
I think the dogs are just fine. So this time, and he didn't really give me his frame of mind here, but I imagine with it being a full year later, the dogs barked before. I don't think he's instantly thinking,
"Oh yeah,
creature."
Probably not. Apollo's constantly on edge.
Apollo is too.
My dog.
But he does take a gun.
Sure.
Because I think at this point, he's just, all precautions aside. And I think after you have an experience where you have to run inside and get your gun, probably for a while after that, you kind of prepare. Plus, being that secluded, I would get the heebie-jeebies. So he has his handgun with him, and he walks out to his backyard. And he explains that there is a big, massive floodlight in his backyard. So this massive floodlight, it illuminates his backyard for the most part. Now there are like trees, there's brushes, there's areas that aren't illuminated, but for the most part with this floodlight, he can see what's going on in his backyard. Despite being able to see the majority of it, there's this brush back there that is super thick, and it's high enough, like the grass or the trees or the bushes, whatever, what have you, is high enough that you can't really see inside. It's thick. So he's trying to calm his dogs down when he hears something rustling in the brush. And he looks at it, and the brush is about 10 feet high. And whatever is looking at him, peeking through the brush, is almost at the top.
It's over 10 feet high?
Technically, it would be under, because the brush is about 10.
Oh,
so
okay.
I'm assuming this is about 8 feet. And not only is it peeking, but it's like peeling the brush. So it's like taking two hands to separate whatever's in front of him, vegetation-wise, to stare at William and the two dogs. And he says it's too dark out, even with the floodlight, to get a great look at what it is, because it's in a very dark area. But he claims it was very humanoidish. Very black, covered in shadows, incredibly tall, but humanoid-ish. About 8 feet high.
Dude, you need to move to the city. Jesus Christ.
So William said at this point, he said, fine, I'm not doing this. And I think that was his polite way of saying, F it. He pulls his gun out and he fires 2 shots directly at it. Now, he admits very humbly that with it being a different handgun than he's used to, he's not the best shot. Not a horrible shot, but not the best shot. So he didn't kill it. He didn't get to examine what it was. It did scamper off. And his dogs tried to chase after it, but thankfully, I think for his dog's health, he was able to stop him. And that is the second encounter.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
So let's go back to the sounds, right?
Yes.
What sounds like babies crying? There are these birds called gray catbirds. Now, they spend their winters in Mexico, Central America. They fly south, as most birds do. However, during the months April to May, that time, they come back up. They can make their way all the way up to Michigan. So we can play a sound if you want to hear it right now. So not exactly like what you might imagine a baby crying off in the distance, but they do kind of give some semblance of a baby crying. Not quite indigenous to this forest, but it's an option. Now, and if you search, what animals sound like a baby crying, this one wasn't very believable to me based on the sound bites that I heard, but people do claim that bobcats can sound like a baby crying.
I heard more like a woman shrieking.
Yeah, I think that's probably been classified as well. That's probably the majority that I could find for specifically the baby crying. Where are your thoughts at with that?
Baby crying, I don't know. Lots of things sound like things, especially if it's like dark, can't see it. I'm not saying he didn't hear what he heard, but it could be chalked up to other things.
Okay, so let's move on to the voices. This is assuming that it's not his imagination, which he admitted that it absolutely could be. Like, he was very honest in his opinion that maybe, imagination's getting the best of him. But let's pretend for a second it's 100% true. Creatures that are theorized to mimic voices include skinwalkers, fleshgates, krakata, demons, and Wendigo.
I was thinking Skinwalker the whole time.
Yes, Skinwalker, which are a Navajo legend. They're basically evil witches. They do ritualistic, terrible things, sacrifice, incest, slaughter, and they get the ability to disguise themselves as animals. Typically southwestern, but stories have kind of moved their way south into the northeast. Maybe because it's gained prominence, but there are stories that pop up. So it is an option. Now, the Wendigo. Wendigo is a creature that was once human but is transformed into a mortal evil spirit when it takes up the practice of cannibalism. However, this is more northern lore, like Minnesota,
that's like up to like
Canada. Even.
Canada,
yes, it's way more northern. And the Krakata, I don't know a ton about that. It was in an episode of Supernatural, which I know you watch. I don't watch.
I haven't seen,
but
I don't know.
Apparently, it's a mythical dog wolf, and it has the ability to mimic voices. There was nothing I could see based on where it is. My instinct, just based on hearing his story, I was landing between Bigfoot creature. I don't want to say like the Bigfoot, but like the idea of a large humanoid primate, or Skinwalker. Those are the two that I was battling between.
To me, this story screams Skinwalker. Skinwalker. That's what it sounds like to me.
I mean, running on hind... It could take an animal. Could have been a wolf. It could have taken on the form of a coyote. And then it ran away and climbed up a tree. And they do mimic voices. I mean, they can trick people and put them in a trance to lead them off to kill them. That is part of the lore.
Yeah. I'm getting shivers. Honestly.
I was feeling Bigfoot until... the voices part, because I heard the story. It was kind of the way that I was told the story isn't exactly the sequence of telling it isn't exactly the same. So I heard about the deer stand before the voices.
Okay.
So when I hearing about the deer stand incident with it climbing the tree, I was thinking man, could this be a Bigfoot? I didn't really hear about Bigfoot being able to climb trees. But then when the voices came in, I agree. It was kind of like, this could be lending itself to a skinwalker.
Oh, but the thing from like fours to bipedal, that's what freaks me out the most.
All right, well then let me bring you back to Earth for a second.
Okay.
So one of the animals that the swamp apparently is known for, the entire swamp, not just his specific section of it. It's a big swamp,
Yeah.
Is the black bear. And the black bear can walk on fours. It can walk bipedal. It can sprint up to 35 miles per hour. And did you know that a black bear can climb a 100-foot tree in 30 seconds? So that could describe it walking on fours, it getting on 2 feet, and it climbing a tree.
Do black bears run 35 miles an hour on 2 feet?
Well, it doesn't say. He didn't really say how far away the tree was from. Like when it heard the dogs growling and then it stood up and ran. I don't know the distance that it ran.
But I'm telling you right now, I don't think a black bear is going to naturally run bipedally.
It probably is going to gallop.
Yeah, I don't. That's weird to me.
I'm just trying to bring this back to Earth a little bit.
I understand what you're saying and how it kind of makes sense.
So you don't buy it?
No.
Okay. But you can see where it's coming from.
Yes, I understand the logic of it. But the sequence of events, if you had said it started bipedally and went to all fours, I could absolutely see that. But because it was reversed, that doesn't pass the smell.
Okay. So here's the last little bit that we'll get into. Is there anything that Suffolk, Virginia is known for? And yes, but not relevant. So there is a ghost story that is actually known to the area. The whole swamp is known to be creepy. Like, that's why it's called Dismal. There was an English writer, Charles Frederick Stansburg, that described the swamp as, quote, a place in which the imagination can play tricks on the victim, unquote. So it's kind of known for being eerie and creepy. And so there's a legend that if you go into the Great Dismal Swamp late at night, you'll see the image of a woman paddling a white canoe on the lake looking for her lover.
Oh.
And it's based on this Indian maiden that died before her wedding day, so therefore she's looking for her groom.
Is she 8 foot tall?
No, and
okay.
But she might be crying.
Yeah.
So there is an explanation, though, that people are kind of coming to for the ghost story specifically. Apparently there's sightings of foxfire, which is like a glowing fungi in the swamp, and it causes gases to drift up into the air, and these gases could be mistaken for spirits and ghosts. So that, I don't want to say it's been debunked because you're using, fungi to kind of explain it. I'm just saying that there are some realistic explanations for why people see that story. But I wasn't able to find anything that matches William's personal stories. Nobody else is reporting seeing Bigfoot-like creatures. Or if they are, I didn't stumble upon it. So I just want to separate the Suffolk, Virginia's popular lore from the personal story that we're getting from William. So what do you think? First of all, we're going to be as thoughtful as we can. If you send us a story and we put it on the podcast, we're not going to make you look stupid. We're not going to say, that was unbelievable. What a dumb story. Everybody unfollow them.
Right, no, that's not what we're about. You just want to look at your stories critically with maybe another opinion.
Right. And in the most polite way possible.
Absolutely.
And it's easier to say because I think there's a lot of weight to this story right now.
Yes.
I try to get the sounds, the mimics, the animals. But you bring up a really good point that I wasn't thinking about before. The black bear probably wouldn't sprint on 2 feet. It probably would gallop on all four.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be more natural for that animal.
I think the creepiest part of the story is the voices and the crying. But I think that's also potentially the most unreliable part because I think your imagination could take animal. I've heard animal noises before where it just, you freak out. But somebody who is, a little bit more hip to the sound might be like, that's a deer or something. You know what I mean? Deer sound pretty freaky late at night. So I think the sounds are a little bit more unreliable, as even he said himself. But you bring a really good point. This thing's 8 feet tall or higher. Using hands to open up and peer at him.
Yeah, for me, the stalking of him at his house is what freaks me out the most. That's the thing that makes me feel like this is not of this earth.
Or at least paranormal.
Yeah, paranormal.
Do you want to look at it through the lens of, do we find this story believable in terms of there's something paranormal lurking in the woods by his house?
Yeah, instead of like giving it an actual name.
Well, I guess I just mean, well, do you want to be like, do you think this is Skinwalker, believable, viable, skeptical?
I don't want to pin it down because I don't know.
Exactly. And if this story was only the voices that you hear, I probably would be a little bit more skeptical.
Yeah.
Or at least use probable cause. Occam's razor, it's a bird. But I think there's too many things that don't line up naturally for the stalking. And I'm using the phrase they use, stalking him. Or at least creeping around the forest. So I think in terms of something paranormal, I'm going to give this a believable.
For me, William, I think this is a believable. Because looking at you through the bushes and then the opposite bear thing running bipedally, it just, oh God, it screams wrong to me.
So that's 2 believables from us, which makes this 100% believable.
Yeah.
So thank you, William, for sending us your story. He sent it to our email. He sent it audio. If you guys want to write us a story, that's fine. However you want to get the story to us, I would appreciate sending it to us at believingthebizarre@gmail.com. Our Instagram inbox is a little full.
That's true.
So if you could email your story to us, we would love to have them. As long as we keep getting those stories from you guys, we're going to keep doing these extra bonus episodes. They're fun.
Yeah. Yeah, we've got a couple lined up. I'm excited to get through them. I mean, not because I want to get through them, but because I want to talk about them.
Again, we really appreciate the support, the kindness, the willingness to listen and share. You all have been absolutely fantastic, and it just keeps motivating us to keep doing better, more researched and topical stories and episodes. So thank you guys so much. I am Tyler.
And I'm Charlie.
And until then, join us on our next episode of Believing the Bizarre.
Thanks again for listening to Scary Time by Indie Drop-In Network. Check out all of Indie Drop-In shows at indiedropin.com. If you would like your show featured, reach out to us at Indie Drop-In on all social media or go to indiedropin.com.